Hi everyone, this is Miss Garcia, and I'm here just to help you a little bit more read through this document a speech by Andrew Jackson. Now, if you already read it and you feel like you really understood it, you're fine. You don't need to listen to this video. But if you want just a little bit of extra help, well, that's what I'm here for. So here we have Andrew Jackson. This is a speech. It's actually his State of the Union speech given on December 30th, 1830. Now, if you recall, Article 2 of the Constitution says that the president needs to give a State of the Union speech where they basically just say, this is what's going on with the country. The state of the country is absolute chaos, or the state of the country is fine. This is Andrew Jackson kind of just giving an update on what's going on in the country. Now, this is in 1830, became president in 1829, so he's still kind of a newbie here. So he's really setting the stage for what he wants his presidency to be or to look like. But let's get started. Again, this is Andrew Jackson, President Jackson's State of the Union speech from December 30th, 1830. So he begins. It gives me great pleasure to announce to Congress that the government's benevolent policy of Indian removal has almost been achieved. We have wept over the fate of the natives of this country, as one by one many tribes have disappeared from the earth. However, we must accept this the way we accept when an older generation dies and makes room for the younger. We would not want to see this continent restored to the condition in which our forefathers found it. What good man would prefer a country covered with forests and occupied by a few thousand savages to our great republic, studded with cities, towns, and prosperous farms, decorated with art and industry, occupied by more than 12 million happy people, and filled with all the blessings of liberty, civilization, and religion? The United States will pay to send the natives to a land where they may live longer and possibly survive as a people. It can be cruel when this government offers to purchase the Indian's land, give him new and extensive territory, pay the expense of his removal, and support him for the first time in his new home. How many thousands of our own people would gladly embrace the opportunity of moving west under such conditions? The policy of the government towards the red man is generous. The Indian is willing to follow the laws of the states and mingle with the population. To save him from utter annihilation, the government kindly offers him a new home and proposes to pay the whole expense of his removal and settlement. So that was Andrew Jackson's speech. Let's break this down a little bit. So he begins by saying that he is very happy to announce that Congress is going to help out benevolently. And let's see down here, kind. So he's saying that the government is being very kind, removing these Native American tribes from their home to a different location. Sounds a little weird. He's saying that this is for the benefit of Native Americans. He's saying that the US government is trying to help out. They're being nice, they're being kind. Now, think about this. If someone were to come into your home tonight and say, hey, I'm going to be so nice to you and kick you out of your home and move you to a place that's way smaller than this, we wouldn't see that as kind. But according to Jackson, this is the right thing to do for Native Americans. He says, we have wept over the fate of the natives of this country, as one by one many tribes have disappeared from the earth. Now, if you recall from last year's world history, we already know the terrible effects that happened to Native Americans when Europeans came over. Not only was there violence that killed many Native Americans, but there was terrible disease that almost completely wiped out the entire Native American population in North and South America. So he's saying it's really sad that Native Americans had died, but we must accept this way. We accept an older generation dies to make room for the younger. So he's saying, yeah, Native Americans died, but we have to make way for us, for the United States. We're the younger generation. He goes on to say, we can't have this country be the way it was when Europeans first came here in the 14 and 1500s. And he uses this word that is extremely derogatory to Native Americans. Savages. This term savages was used to describe Native Americans because they weren't, quote unquote, as civilized as the European white man was. We know now that this is a very terrible way of seeing people who are different than you. So he even uses this word savages, because they don't have Christianity, because they don't wear clothes like we do, because they don't have Western ideas like us. Apparently, because of that, they're savage. So Andrew Jackson's saying, hey, we really upgraded this place. He's saying, if it weren't for us, North America wouldn't have amazing cities and culture and prosperous farms and art and industry. Well, we actually know that many Native American tribes had really big populations. They had their own art, they had their own culture, they had their own religion. But because it wasn't the Western religion and culture and language, well, because of that, according to Jackson, they were savages. He goes on to say, the United States will pay to send natives to a land where they may live longer and possibly survive as a people. Here, Jackson is saying that we're doing this for the benefit of Native Americans. Now, we know, because we've seen this year, that Native Americans had a lot of conflict with Americans, and that's because Americans were kept pushing onto their land. So obviously, conflict will arise. Here, Jackson is saying, you know what, we should stop fighting with Native Americans. We'll simply move them, move the problem further west. They won't be our problem anymore, and we'll be able to keep their land. But again, Jackson is coding this with an idea that we're doing this for them. Can it be cruel when this government offers to purchase the Indian's land, give him a new extensive territory, and pay the expense of his removal and support him for the first year in his new home? So here Jackson is saying, hey, we're not being mean. We're being so nice. We're helping them. When in reality, we actually know that, here, I'll show you another, in a second, I'll show you another example. Yeah, the Indian Removal Act takes many different Native American tribes and actually squeezes them into a tiny area that is today the state of Oklahoma. So here Jackson's saying, no, we're being super nice. We're paying for them to move. It's going to be extensive. It's going to be a nice big land. We actually know in reality that many Native American tribes with history of conflict with each other were pushed in to one small place. It's kind of like taking you and anyone you ever had problems with and moving you into a one-bedroom apartment. That won't be very good for you. You would not like that. And Native Americans did not like this idea either. How many thousands of our people would gladly embrace the opportunity of moving west under such conditions? Here he's referring to westward expansion. This is something we've talked about all year. Americans kept moving west. Manifest destiny. This idea that we are allowed to move west. It is our God-given right as Americans to take over this land in the West. This is what he's referring to. And we know that many, many people were moving west. Many Americans were moving west, especially after the Louisiana Purchase under Jefferson that really doubled the size of the United States. So he's saying, Jackson here is saying, hey, we're going to move Native Americans west. I mean, a lot of us Americans want that. A lot of us Americans want to move west. So we're really doing them a really big favor. And finally, the last paragraph. The policy of the government toward the red man is generous. Again, here we see another derogatory term. This is not a good word that we know of. Like now we know that this is not a good term to use. But here Jackson is saying, oh, we're being so nice to Native Americans. We're being so generous. We're being so kind. We're doing this for them. The Indian is willing to follow the laws of the states and mingle with the population to save him from utter destruction, utter death, utter annihilation. The government kindly offers him a new home and proposes to pay the whole expense of his removal and settlement. I mean, if I were living in 1830 and I heard President Jackson say the speech, I would probably agree with him. The president is saying this is good for Native Americans. We're being nice to them.